Hello and welcome. Ukraine and Russian military bloggers alike expect a big Russian offensive aiming to decide the war, while Ukraine is getting more aid from the West, while at the same time it's getting kind of disappointed by other responses. This and more in this situation report. The NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said there are no signs for Russian willingness to make peace. There's only the exact opposite. Russia is still pursuing maximalist goals, and it is possible that they are going to recruit another 200,000 men, that they are going to mobilize another 200,000 men. At the same time, they are buying weapons and ammunition with ramping up their own war economy and from Iran and North Korea. Ukrainian state institutions and speakers, as well as Russian military bloggers, are expecting a timely, in the clear proximity, the breakout of a big Russian offensive. Ukrainian sources are saying right now 3,500 to 5,000 Russian soldiers are close to Vuhledar in reserve to participate in offensive operations in this direction. Totally, according to the Ukrainian side, right now Russia is using 326,000 soldiers in Ukraine. 150,000 mobilized personnel are not even deployed yet. In Belarus, there are currently, depending on estimates, between 5,000 and 9,000 Russian soldiers, but they are there for training and to improve their skills. Also, they are there to repair damaged material and to refurbish war material that was taken out of storage. So any offensive out of Belarus into Ukraine in a timely fashion seems highly unlikely as of now. We have reports from Human Rights Watch that Ukrainian forces have used butterfly mines in the war, and they say it's illegal by international agreements. And as far as I know, Ukraine has actually signed the treaty to ban mines that are not anti-tank mines, so mines against personnel mines. Anti-personnel mines is the name exactly. In past situation reports, I already mentioned those events that according months ago. It was mostly when the fight was around Lysychansk. Especially there was a video with the first mines that I saw was in the refinery close to Lysychansk, where there were butterfly mines on the floor, and it was taken from the Russian perspective, and there have been repeated new videos with butterfly mines. And according to my analysis in the situations there, which I published on YouTube as well, both sides have used those butterfly mines, because obviously you can kind of estimate who probably shot it by the position they were placed at. You don't mine your own position with butterfly mines which are untargeted, which are either air launched or shot with artillery. So you do that into enemy held territory. And if the Ukrainians show butterfly mines in territory that they never gave up, then it's highly likely that it comes from the Russian, and the other way around. Depending on the situation on the ground, we can estimate the Ukrainians having used them as well. So no big new news for anyone who watches my channels, but of course some of you might be new. So Human Rights Watch is now accusing Ukraine to do that, and in my book they have used it like the Russians did, and Ukraine is using anti-personnel mines as well, despite them having signed the treaty against it. But of course, while these are the facts, we can argue that Ukraine is mining its own territory. So first and foremost, it's their own problem doing it. And secondly, obviously, they are facing an invasion by Russia. And if they take all the means they find available to fight the Russians, who can seriously blame them? But that's a little bit political. On the Eastern Front, we have reports about continuous fighting, basically from north to south. Nothing has changed here. There are some claims and some indications that the Russians might have pushed back the Ukrainians a little here in the forest south of Crimean, but I cannot really confirm this. So heavy fighting is continuing there, but I cannot really confirm any change in the control of territory. South of the Seversky Donetsk, not much has changed either. Focus of most of the fighting is around Bakhmut. Maybe there are some signs that the Russians might have advanced in that direction here and have now reached the ridges that are overlooking the T0504 west of Ivanivske. They should already have clear view more or less from the area there, but if they have thrown the Ukrainians out of the high ground, then obviously it should allow them an easy advance further, even though they are boxed in with the canal on their left flank, and there are two more ridge lines in front of them along the road. Also, there are some reports that maybe northwest of Soledar there are some minor gains as well, even though I cannot fully confirm that. With Wagner forces now mostly being expended, we now have more and more reports about regular Russian forces being deployed around Bakhmut. Especially the VDV is being confirmed here, by the way, as well as in Crimean, which would be again a reference to what I said in the past, where the past VDV commander was dismissed and replaced, likely after fallout with Gerasimov, because it is likely that he complained about the use of the VDV as regular ground forces in an attritional battle. The speaker of the Eastern Ukrainian forces groups said that right now the supply lines, so the lines of communication into Bakhmut, are not endangered. As of now, they are still fully capable of supplying Bakhmut, but the Ukrainians are saying they are preparing for all eventualities. That includes obviously breakthroughs and further advances by the Russians. It is to be expected. There were voices from within Bakhmut, from the forces, their commanders, saying that in worst case they will evacuate before they get encircled. But at the same time, they are mentioning that because of the heavy fighting in Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, where the situation was somewhat comparable, where Russia was slowly creeping forward to some kind of encirclement, because they kept fighting there for so long and were inflicting such heavy losses on the Russians, the Russian offensive after they accumulated and thus culminated, and thus the Ukrainians were afterwards able to establish a new front line that held for months afterwards. Further south, we have the usual reports about fighting around Avdiivka and Marinka, but nothing supposedly changed here. And we have some pictures from fighting in Vuhledar, which is down here, and it shows us both. I need to make sure it's quiet. Yep, it is. So we see Russian tanks here. You can see it on the sign. It shows us the openness of the terrain that is visible. You see an air defense system. I think it should have been Tor. I'm not completely sure. But you see how the area is flat. And at the same time, we can see here how the Russians are more or less using their tanks as forward assault gun or as an artillery piece. As you can see, all the spent casings, you see it, how it's been thrown out by the autoloader, and you see them all in one bunch. So the tank didn't move for minutes while shooting, more or less like a direct fire artillery support, not really doing mechanized warfare in this regard, not really doing any support in this regard when it comes to mobile assaults. On the southern front, it's somewhat unclear when it comes to Zaporizhzhia. We have reports from the Ukrainian side that there are no more attacks. We have reports that fighting is still continuing with small groups of 10 men or less, fighting for advantageous tactical positions. And the Russian Ministry of Defense is saying that they captured some tactical advantageous positions without mentioning the positions. So it's unclear, but it seems to be clear that there's no big offensive going on and that the majority of the front line is not changing anymore. We also have a video here from Berislav where the Russians are using incendiary ammunition on Berislav, as you can see here. Now, Berislav is on the Dnipro river, right along the front line here. And the big question, obviously, is why would they use incendiary ammunition here like they keep doing on this front line? It seems increasingly that the Russians are trying to preserve their regular high explosive ammunition for the front lines where they intend to advance, while using less useful ammunition in fighting against ground forces on other front lines to keep the Ukrainians busy. That would explain why they keep using incendiary ammunition along the Dnipro, but mostly there, even though there have been reports in the past, for instance, about Marinka being shelled with incendiary ammunition as well. From the Crimea, we have reports that the fourth segment of the Kerch Bridge, according to the Russians, is now installed. That obviously doesn't mean the bridge is fully operational yet. So far, they haven't changed their prediction that in March it will be fully operational yet. So we can expect the Kerch Bridge to be fully functional again within weeks. On the Crimean Peninsula, the Ukrainian Resistance Center is saying Russia is detaining dozens of Crimean Tatars with the accusation that they are part of Hizb ut-Tahrir. Those are Islamists that are in Central Asia and have been historically active on the Crimean Peninsula as well, but I think they also fought in Syria and Iraq. So it's an Islamist organization, and there are accusations that this is being used as an excuse to actually do ethnic cleansing. This is what the Ukrainian Resistance Center says. If you arrest a few dozen, I don't really see this adding up to ethnic cleansing yet. It might be an excuse to take prisoner the Crimean Tatars, which are considered to be loyal towards Kiev, to reduce the threat by partisans or anything like this. But as said, this is what the Ukrainian Resistance Center says. Make out of it what you believe yourself. According to Military Land, I think it's Ukrainian website, or at least it's a pro-Ukrainian website. They said that Ukraine is currently establishing a couple of new brigades, the 21st Mechanized Brigade, the 33rd Mechanized Brigade, which was in existence since 2016, but was later deactivated. So it was just existent on paper. It's getting currently activated. The 47th Artillery Brigade is already established and is now stationed in Kharkiv province along the border with Russia. The 116th Mechanized Brigade and the 118th Mechanized Brigade are already also in the process of being established. Mechanized brigades, that would mean 4 new mechanized brigades, and mostly, supposedly, they are going to be using the Western donated equipment. Each mechanized brigade, as far as I remember, has a regular setup of 34 main battle tanks. So for those 4 brigades, they would use more or less 130, 140 main battle tanks, in addition to a couple of hundred IFVs and APCs. The Russian General Prosecutor said in a conversation with Putin that was published that 9,000 men were illegally mobilized during the mobilization. They have now been sent home after having been identified. It's in regards to soldiers or personnel being excluded from the mobilization because of various reasons, and they still had been called up. Supposedly they are being sent home. He also admitted that there have been a lot of problems during the mobilization, but he claimed that the majority of them is now solved. And he also said now every payment that was still outstanding, that was still not having been paid, is now being paid. So basically the balance sheets are cleared up. Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, said the Ministry of Defense is from now on going to take care of the equipment and the supply of the volunteer units. The interesting part is that it also says that volunteers will now on be responsible for damage to their equipment because of negligence. That implies that it actually has been a bigger problem. Otherwise, you wouldn't introduce that. That's an old story that you have a sign somewhere where whatever it says, riding on crocodiles is forbidden. The story is always, okay, so somebody was actually riding on crocodiles here. This would imply that damage to equipment because out of negligence is a massive problem as of now. All of those measures that Shoigu did and Gerasimov did in the past few weeks have to be seen in the In the context of the attempt by the Ministry of Defense and the General Staff and Gerasimov to take full control of over the war, to stop those autonomous armies like Kadyrov and Wagner, to integrate them into the regular Russian armed forces, which should also help streamlining it and obviously increase professionalization. There are continuing rumors also about the about coming mobilization. We have a Russian Telegram site here that says supposedly students are now being called at several universities to register themselves. Again, you can pause it and read it yourself. And we have interesting thing when it comes to Sasha Kotz. Sasha Kotz asked the Ministry of Defense what's happening to contract soldiers. Why aren't they being let out of the military? And they said to him that during the mobilization, there is no one being released except for age, for injury, or for being imprisoned. I mean, wasn't that clear from the beginning? At least that's what was how I read the fact of a mobilization. If you mobilize, you don't let anyone home anymore unless you have to. And if in my breaking news, when Russia mobilized, I mentioned that very topic, that from now on, conscripts don't necessarily have to be released anymore. And every volunteer, every contract soldier from now on has no longer a right to be released from his contract. Vladislav Borisenko, now we are entering the political sphere, is a Russian citizen who in May threw a Molotov cocktail on a recruitment bureau, and it's now being published that he has been sentenced to 12 years in prison for that, for terrorism. So instead of vandalism or arson, he is now being sentenced for terrorism. That's one of the part of the increased punishments that Russia has introduced, but they only, as far as I remember, they only introduced it after he had committed that crime. So Russia is even breaking with those judicial norms that you cannot be punished for something if you did it before the law was introduced or before the law has been strengthened in this regard. Putin also published a decree that would stop the limits in time when it comes to the duration of terror warning decrees or levels. So far, it was limited to 15 days and had to be renewed. Now it can be done indefinitely. And at the same time, from now on, areas with yellow warning ratio are allowed to check cars on their administrative borders for guns and explosives as well. When it comes to the international support, I already did a breaking news about it, but maybe you missed it. The US are now allowing GLSDB, ground-launched small diameter bombs, to be delivered to Ukraine. Those bombs have a range of 150 kilometers, have the capability to penetrate into a target and then detonate. They supposedly have a higher accuracy, and they should be able to, for instance, be much more efficient against bridges if being used in this, which would more or less threaten the whole southern Russian front line, the whole lines of communications there into Crimea itself. It should threaten every supply depot in this region, every headquarters, which will force the Russians to disperse, which makes it far less efficient, or which will force the Russians, once they arrive in mass, which will force the Russians to withdraw their supply depots and use trucks for an even longer range, thus reducing the output or the delivery of supplies to the front line furthermore. Russia will either start having more supply issues along the front line, or they will have to invest a lot more into their supply units. They will have to confiscate civilian trucks likely, or have to buy trucks in big scale from abroad to be able to keep their supplies running. This should help Ukraine a lot, and you could probably argue that this might be more helpful in the coming 3-5 months than the delivery of a couple of Western tanks. But obviously, you're invited to dispute that or to argue in this regard in the comment section, which can be highly interesting and obviously helps with the algorithm as well. Spain has also now said they are going to send Leopard 2, but they are now saying 4 to 6 Leopard 2A4. At least the German journal Der Spiegel said so. The US have also said no to deliver jets, at least as of now. The French, on the other hand, said it's still possible. They don't rule out delivery of tanks, of jets, but as of now, it seems unclear. And we have here, for instance, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said it would take too long because the system is so sophisticated. Well, if you're going to deliver in the end, and it was clear from the beginning, we can be sure as of now, and I said so. I just checked my videos yesterday. I did it 9 months ago. It was the first moment I found it where I already referenced earlier moments. So at the very least 9 months ago, I already said that in the end they are going to get Western main battle tanks and they are going to get jets in the end. Maybe you should start training now and just leave it up for the political decision to come later if you expect it to happen anyways. Because the whole argument that is coming now that Ukraine will take ages before it even helps, well, this debate could have been 9 months ago, and the training could be more or less completed as of now, or at least far ahead if it had been started then. We will have to see though how and if there are jets going to come. Leave your comment in the comment section. Leave me your opinion. Do you think they are actually going to get jets, and which nation do you think is going to be the first one to promise jets to Ukraine? If you like what I do here, this channel is only possible because of the support from viewers like you. So if you want to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting the channel. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up button. It helps with the algorithm. It really helps, as do comments. And if you want to see more situation reports and more reports about developments around the war in Ukraine, then subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos, and recommend the channel to your friends and acquaintances to help it grow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back.